All right. So today we are going to start with the first live lecture of performance management, right? And the topic which I chose is actually variance analysis, which is a very important part of performance management subject. Variances, as we have already discussed in our previous paper F2, that shows the difference between original standard and the actual results, and that shows how much we deviated during a particular period from our standard, right? But there is another concept in F5 or performance measurement, that is the concept of planning and operational variances, right? Now, what do you mean by planning and operational variance? Before starting that, let me try to give you a basic idea of what is the concept of planning and operational variances and why we need this variances, why we need this new concept, right? Let's suppose that we prepared a standard, and on 1st January, on 1st of January, we prepared a standard where we have mentioned that the price of raw material, let's say raw material is sugar, price of raw material is going to be around, if I'm talking about with respect to Pakistan, so it's going to be around 100 rupees per kilogram. Let's suppose. And what we believe is that this raw material will require around zero point 0.5 kilogram in the manufacturing of particular product. Let's say we are manufacturing a cake, or let's say we are manufacturing anything. Now, what happened is that I'm focusing on the price of raw material, right? The standard price which we have set was around 100 rupees per kilogram. This is the standard price. But what happened is, when at the end of the time period, at the end of the year, when I calculated the actual price, so the actual price of raw material was not 100. Actual price of raw material was around, let's say, 108 rupees per kilogram, right? So what I'm seeing here is that my raw material prices have been increased by 8 rupees per kilogram. And obviously, we have not used 1 kilogram during the whole year. We must have used some other quantity. Let's say if we have used 10,000 kilograms during the whole year, that means what? That means overall expenditure was 10,000 8 rupees per kilogram extra we paid, multiply by 10,000 kilograms. That means what? That means we have paid around 80,000 rupees extra. We have paid 80,000 rupees excessive of our standard. And obviously, this is going to be an adverse variance. And what we will say that material price has been increased by 8 rupees per kilogram, and because of which the company overall suffered 80,000 extra cost, right? So this is basically what we have studied in our F2 paper or previous paper, that this usually is the story. But let me tell you one more event that actually happened during the period. And that event was during the period, raw material, because of some, I mean, there can be some event. For instance, there was shortage of sugar, there was some um, let's say there was supply side issue, or there was some smuggling of sugar from our country to another country. And let's say because of some macroeconomic factor, sugar prices were actually not sugar prices, though the market sugar price increased to 110 rupees per kilogram. This actually happened during the year, right? Now, if I hide this information, I'm not happy with the purchasing department, because what I'm seeing without this information is that the purchasing department overspent 80,000 rupees. But if I consider this 110, that market price during the period rose to 110 rupees per kilogram, this is the market price during the period, then do you think that purchasing department actually didn't perform well? Do you think that? Obviously, no. because purchasing department, instead of buying the same raw material at 110 rupees per kilogram, they actually bought the same raw material at 108 rupees per kilogram. So the person who I really wanted to, penalize or, fire from our department, I'm seeing now that person to be the efficient one, right? So this piece of information is very critical. And in the presence of this information, we can reasonably say that purchasing department actually performed well, because instead of buying it at 110, he bought it at 108. So here comes the concept of planning and operational variances. See, what is the concept of planning variances? This 100 and planning variances means any variances that arise during the period because of some uncontrollable factor. Uncontrollable factor means, like in this question, overall market prices increased to 108 rupees per 110 rupees per kilogram. This is not my fault. This is not the fault of purchasing department. So this market impact should not affect the performance of purchasing manager. Now, the problem with variances is that we prepare standard at the start of the year, and obviously that standard is for whole year, and you cannot control all events for 12 months, obviously. So what we do is we give a favor to, not exactly the favor, um, we give an option to managers that, look, if some uncontrollable event happen, you can revise the standard, right? So now let me complete this point. So what we do is, in planning variances, we consider all factors which are uncontrollable by the managers. He can be purchasing manager, he can be sales manager, he can be anyone. So any factor which is uncontrollable by the purchasing manager, this is any factor which is uncontrollable by the manager, we calculate it under planning variance. So in this case, what we will do is we will say that, okay, fine, planning material price variance will be what? That will be the difference between original price and the revised price. Original price means originally we were expecting this raw material to be of 100 rupees per kilogram, but market forces increased the price to 110. So original price minus 110 multiplied by 10,000. This 10,000 rupees, this 1 lakh rupees variance, which is obviously adverse, will be considered in the planning variance. Now, what will be the benefit of doing so? We will say that, look, this is a variance that actually happened because of uncontrollable factor. So you should not penalize, you should not blame your production manager because of this factor. So the manager will not be responsible for 100,000 adverse variance in this case, right? And what we will do in the other part, we are going to calculate operational variance. Operational variance means any factor variance arise due to any controllable factor. Controllable factor means what? Instead of buying that raw material at 110 rupees per kilogram, he actually bought material at 108 rupees. So that is basically his efficiency now. He actually tried to, have some favors from supplier. He actually tried to, have some discounts from supplier. So what he actually did it, instead of buying the same raw material at 110 rupees per kilogram, he actually bought that material at 108. So we should give benefit to, we should actually appreciate that manager. So 10,000 multiplied by 2, that's going to be around 20,000 favorable. And what we call this variance, we will call this variance as operational material price variance. Right? So we have actually split this 80,000 adverse into two parts. From original to revised, we kept it in planning variance, and from revised to actual, we kept it in operational variances. And what is the benefit of doing so? Benefit is that your managers will only be responsible for operational variances. They are not going to be responsible for the planning variances. So the first point which we have identified was what? All planning variance is something which is dependent upon uncontrollable factor, that arises due to uncontrollable factor. The second and most important point is your managers. Your managers are not responsible for it. Okay. Your manager, sorry, I was on full screen, and when I'm on full screen, I'm unable to see if someone wants to get admit in the class. So let me try to disable that option if I can do so. I tried to do it. I tried to disable that waiting room option. So now anyone who wants to join, he or she may. Okay. Managers are not responsible for planning variance, right? Why? Because that actually happened because of uncontrollable factor. And if you are announcing any kind of reward, any kind of bonuses, then that bonuses should not be dependent upon planning variance. And that completely makes sense because this is something which is beyond the control of manager. So bonuses should not be based on planning variance, right? So, and this, let's try to translate all these three properties for operational variances. Operational variances are variances that arise due to any controllable factor. Let me try to give you an example. See, if if I have changed the supplier at my own, I actually change the supplier because I don't want to purchase raw material from same supplier again and again. That is my decision, and I'm going to be responsible if I'm unable to get good quality or a good price from that supplier. But if that supplier get bankrupt, or suppose there is a company who was operating in Pakistan, but now it is not operating in Pakistan, it has just shut down its business in Pakistan. So I don't have any supplier left. My supplier actually shut down its business in Pakistan. So I have to move to another supplier. Or suppose if my supplier get bankrupt, so I have to move to another supplier. So this is something which I cannot control. I cannot control the bankruptcy of my supplier. I cannot control the decisions of my supplier. So in that case, if I'm moving towards another supplier, that is an uncontrollable factor. If I'm increasing the wage rate of labor, that is my decision. I'm going to be responsible for that, and that should be the part of operational variance. But if government is increasing the minimum wage rate, that is beyond my control. So mostly the macroeconomic level factors, I mean, price changes, petrol price changes, disposable income issues, all these issues are something which we cannot control. Any decision which is made within the company is usually a controllable event, right? So we as a manager, I mean, our managers are only responsible for anything which is operational variance, right? Um, okay, right. So operational variance, let's try to translate this. Managers are responsible for operational variance, right? And bonus should be given on the basis of operational variance, right? So this is basically the concept of planning and operational variances, that what is the basic concept of planning variance and operational variance, right? Now, how we can translate our F2 formula or FMA formula into planning and operational? It's very simple, it's very basic. Till here, is there any issue? Do you guys have any issue till here? So you can let me know in the chat box. Otherwise, we are going to continue. What we studied in F2 was that F2 or FMA was that material price variance is equals to standard price minus actual price multiplied by actual quantity used. This is mostly the formula which we have used in our F2 paper. If we split it into planning and operational variance, it's going to be a little bit different. We will split this part in such a manner that original to revise will become the part of planning, and revise and actual will become the part of operational. So material price variance, planning may in material price variance is going to be original price minus revised price. I mean 100 minus 110 as we did. And in operational variances, material price variance is going to be revised price minus actual price, right? And we will multiply this with actual quantity used as we did in F2, right? Okay, then material usage variance. Now, can we calculate material usage variance in a similar way? Yes, we can do so. Let's suppose we were using sugar in the industry in the product, or we are using some raw material in the product, some imported raw material, right? And what government did, government actually imposed a ban on the import of that raw material. So obviously we have to use the local raw material, right? And if you will use local raw material, its quality will be different, its price will be different. So obviously with prices, there will be also an impact on the quality of raw material, right? Um, so in that case, we will use original quantity minus revised quantity. And in operational material usage variance, we will use revised quantity minus actual quantity, right? Or we will multiply this with the standard price, as we standard price of raw material as we did in F2. Right? Similarly, labor rate variance. Labor rate variance, originally labor rate variance was original rate minus revised rate, sorry, standard rate minus actual rate multiplied by actual hours worked. Now we will translate the same formula by using this concept that original wage rate minus revised wage rate and revised wage rate minus actual wage rate multiplied by actual hours worked, right? Similarly, labor efficiency variance will be, what we did in F2 was standard hours minus actual hours multiplied by standard wage rate, right? So here we will do the same concept, original hours minus revised hours, and labor efficiency variance will be revised hours minus actual hours multiplied by standard wage rate. Right. So this is basically the basic concept of planning in operational variance. The theme to remember is you have to compare original and revision. Revision, one more thing, just a conclusion that we make revision of any standard. Standard means standard price, standard consumption, standard wage rate, standard hours. We can revise it if something uncontrollable happened. Like for instance, this Ukraine and Russia thing, when it is happening, oil prices are shooting, right? It's increasing day by day. So if oil prices are increasing because of uncontrollable reason, and that's creating an upward pressure on cost of my industry, my product, I have to revise the standard, because that is something which we cannot control, right? So let's try to do one basic question of this, one F5 past paper question of that. I hope we can do this because yeah, we have time. We have 30 minutes. So we can do that. If you have any issue, just write it in the comment box. Now, this is the question which is from ACCA F5 paper. And this is a very interesting question. You can connect the scenario with what is happening right now in the world. Let's just start with this. This is actually related to material part, right? Okay, fine. Let's start this. You are required to calculate the total material price and material usage variance, ignoring any possible planning errors in the figure. This is something which we have already did in F2, right? You are supposed to redo that F2 wala part. And then analyze the above total variances into component part for planning and operational variance in as much detail as allowed by the information. Now, this is a very interesting statement. In majority cases, planning and operational variances, in majority cases, examiner says that, look, whatever you want to do, you can do as much as allowed by the information. So it's actually your intelligence that how you can identify where we have to calculate a planning variance and operational variance. So that's something which is important. And then you have to analyze the performance of production manager. So this is something which we will do here. Now, see, SecureNet manufactures security cards that restrict the access to government-owned building in the world. So usually in F5, the first line actually is connected with the business. Examiner usually tell you what the company is doing right now. So the company is manufacturing security cards, right? The standard cost of plastic that goes into making this card is $4 per kilogram, and each card uses 40 grams of plastic after an allowance for wastage. Now hold on. What are these two things given here? This $4 per kilogram is what? This is price, right? Now, this price is what? This price is the standard price, right? So standard price of plastic is $4 per kilogram, and the standard consumption is 40 gram. Let's write it price. And usage is 40 grams. This is the standard or original, what we actually budgeted, right? In November 100,000 cards were produced and sold by SN, and this was well above the budget of 60,000 cards. So this 100,000 is actually representing what? This 100,000 is the actual production. Actual production was 100,000 cards. And this was well above the budget, which was 60,000. So the budgeted was 60,000. 60,000 is not a standard. Actually, this is the budget. There's a difference between standard and budget. I don't know if you guys know this or not. When we are saying that, see, standard actually represent the factor of production. For instance, standard price, standard consumption, standard wage rate, standard hour, standard selling price, everything is a standard. But when you are talking about the production, production is not a standard. Production is always budgeted, right? So the per unit is always a standard. In totality is always budget. I mean, we will not, we usually say budgeted consumption, budgeted cost, budgeted hours, budgeted labor cost, right? So in totality is always called budgeted, right? Per unit is always called standard. So production is not a standard. This is the budgeted production, right? Then it says the actual cost of plastic. Now from here, try to concentrate. The actual cost of plastic was 5.25 per kilogram, and the production manager, who is responsible for all buying and production issues, was asked to explain the increase. The actual price was 5.25, right? So the actual price was around 5.25. I'm writing this because this will help me in solving the question. Thank you for this support. Okay, so where we were in a situation. Okay, fine. Let me try to recall this video. Recall what we were doing. The actual cost was around 5.25 per kg, and the production manager was asked to increase the per kg, and the production manager was asked to explain the increase. He said the world oil price increases pushed up plastic prices by 20% compared to our budget, right? This is the first argument. And I also decided to use a different supplier who promised better quality and increased reliability for a slightly higher prices. I know we have overspent, but not all increase in plastic prices is my fault. Now, what he actually informed you about the reasons. He said the first reason was oil prices. And the second reason was he deliberately changed the supplier of raw material. Now the question is, production manager should be held responsible for which of the reason? Because if production manager is, production manager is not responsible for which of the reason, because see, world oil prices is beyond the control of production manager, right? So we cannot blame him that why this happened, right? So that he should not be responsible for world oil prices. However, he also chose to use a different supplier. That is something which is his decision. He should be responsible for that, right? So what we will do, we will put a revise column here, revision or revise, and we will say that, okay, fine, this 20% price increase is not his fault. So if you take 4 times 20%, that is around 0.8. So he is not going to be responsible for $0.8 increase, which means that the revised price is going to be around $4.8 per kilogram, right? Then, and obviously the rest is he's responsible. The actual usage of plastic per kg was 35 gram per card, and again the production manager had an explanation, right? So actual consumption was also 35 grams per card. And he had an explanation. He said that the worldwide standard size of security card increased by 5% due to change in the card reader technology. However, our new supplier provided much better quality of plastic and this helped to cut down the wastage, right? So, do you think that this change in security card size is something which production manager can control? I mean, just try to recall. There was a time when we used normal SIM card in our mobile phone. Then there was a micro SIM card, and there was a nano SIM. So if nano SIM is there, there is a slight reduction of plastic in its manufacturing, right? And obviously, I'm not responsible for that if that happened, right? So he is not responsible for this 5% change, right? So 40 grams times 5%, 5 into 4 is 20. So that's going to be that's going to be 2 grams, I guess. You can try to calculate it. So he's not responsible for 2 grams. So revised consumption will be around 42 grams. Right. So this is the whole story. Now, if someone asks you to calculate total material price variance and usage variance, ignoring any possible planning and operational figures, so how you will calculate that? See, in that case, we have to ignore this part. In that case, we have to ignore this part for part A. Part A is actually the concept of F2 original minus actual, right? So material price variance will be what? Material price variance in this case will be standard price, which is $4, minus actual price, which is 5.25, multiplied by actual quantity used. Material price variance is what? Standard price minus actual price into actual quantity used, right? Standard price was $4, actual price is 5.25, multiplied by actual consumption. Actual consumption is given in grams. Sorry, 35 grams per card. And one card requires 35 grams, and we have manufactured 100,000 cards. So 100,000 multiplied by 35 grams divided by 1,000, because this is grams. So that will give you, try to calculate this. This will be 3,500. So this is basically actual quantity used. Actual quantity used is 3,500, and that will give you the answer. Let me try to share something, the whole screen. Okay. So calculator. Okay. So 4 minus 5.25 is this, multiplied by 3,500 is 4,375. Right? And material usage variance is going to be what? Material usage variance is standard quantity minus actual quantity multiplied by standard price, right? So original quantity was what? Original quantity was 40 grams. If you multiply standard, if you want to calculate the standard quantity, so this is standard quantity allowed for actual production, not the budgeted production. So 100,000 units we produced, and the standard says that 1 unit require 40 grams. So this is going to be around 4,000. We just converted grams into kgs, right? So 4,000 was the standard consumption and actual consumption was 3,500, which we have previously calculated. Multiplied by standard price is 4. So that is going to be around 2,000 favorable, right? So the total variance is what? Total variance is 2,375 adverse. And obviously, this is something which we are not going to like, because this is over expenditure in terms of material cost. This is part A. This was 4 marks requirement of part A. Now in part B, the question is asking you to calculate planning and operational variances, right? So if you split this 4,375 into planning and operational, what you will get, let's try to do this. Material price variance, let's try to calculate planning variance, right? Planning material price variance means what? Originally, we thought that this material should have cost $4 per kilogram. Original price minus revised price. And if you calculate operational variances, that will be revised price minus actual price, multiplied by actual quantity used in both cases. Original price was $4 and revised price was 4.8. Right? Multiply by actual quantity used. Actual quantity used was around 3,500 grams, kgs. And what is operational variance? Operational variance means revised price 4.8, yeah, this part 4.8 compared with 5.25. Multiply by 3,500, right? So 4 minus 4.8 multiplied by 3,500 is 2,800. And 4.8 minus 5.25 times 3,500 is 1,575. So your production manager is who is responsible for purchasing matters as well. He will not be responsible for completely 4,375 adverse variance. He is only going to be responsible for 1,575 adverse variance, because this 2,800 actually happened because of oil prices. And this variance actually happened because of change in supplier. Right? Achha. Then let's try to calculate material usage variance. Material usage variance will be original quantity minus revised quantity. And operational may this is going to be revised quantity minus actual quantity multiplied by original price. Right? So original quantity is what? Original quantity was around 40 grams per card, and 40 grams per card times 100,000 cards, that makes around 4,000 was the original consumption, right? Consumption should always be based on actual production, never multiplied with the budgeted production. Revised quantity was around 42 grams. So if you multiply 42 grams with 100,000 and divide it with 1,000, because you want to convert it into grams, kgs, so it's going to be 4,200. Multiply by original price. Original price was $4, this one. So this is going to be 800 adverse. right? And revised quantity was 4,200. Instead of 4,200, we made the same raw material in 3,500 kgs, same product in 3,500 kgs. So multiply by original price, which is 4. So 4,200 minus 3,500 multiply by 4, 2,800. Right? So this 800 manager is not responsible for this 800 because this is due to worldwide security size change of security cards, and he is not responsible for that. He will be only responsible for 2,800 adverse, not adverse. ये favorable है. Sorry, this is favorable. He will only be responsible for 2,800 favorable. So if you are trying to analyze the performance of purchasing manager, you should add planning variances. Planning variances are 1,575 plus, sorry, minus, because one is adverse and one is favorable, 1,225. He is only responsible for 1,225 favorable variance. Favorable because favorable is higher. And he is not responsible for planning variances, which is 2,800 adverse and 800, 36. We will call this variance as planning variance, total planning variance, and this is total operational variance. Right? So if you sum up this whole situation, so what is actually how you will conclude, how you will sum up this, and when we are summing it up, we are actually trying to attempt part C because calculation was only in part B. Originally, when we look at part A, if we ignore this variance, this revision, and considering this total variance, total material variance, it seems that production manager has overspent. Why? Because he spent $2,375 more as compared with the standard. But it's really very important to look into planning and operational variances because planning variances are those variances which are controllable, which are uncontrollable by the production manager. As we can see that in this question, world oil change, increase in world oil prices and change of security card size, both are beyond the control of purchasing manager. Therefore, manager will not be responsible for 3,600 adverse variance. However, since production manager changed supplier at his own will, therefore he will be responsible for, sorry. Then there is another part. In operational variances are those variances which are under the control of of managers. As we can see that in this question, change of supplier was actually a decision took by this production manager. So he will be responsible. He's going to be responsible for that, and he is responsible for 1,225 favorable variances. So it seems that operational variances are favorable, therefore he should be given bonuses, right? So this is basically how we can interpret this part. This is 8 marks requirement now. So one paragraph is for total variance, one paragraph is for planning variance, and try to incorporate the real situation which are given in the question. One paragraph will be for operational variance and one paragraph will be for any other factor. So 2 marks for total, 2 marks for identifying planning issues, 2 marks for identifying operational issues, and 2 marks for any other. Ultimately, it's going to be 8 marks. And what is the other part? See, there's one more thing. This company has changed its supplier in order to improve the quality, right? Do you think quality has improved? Just see this production and sales. The 60,000 was production and sales, both. Produced and sold, this part. Originally, we were budgeted that we were expecting that company should have sold, will sell around 60,000 cards, but actually it sold 100,000 cards. So it sold 40,000 more cards, right? I believe in FI, whenever you are doing any performance measurement question, try to focus on ratios rather than absolute figures. Ratios in the sense, see, if you sell 40, if your budgeted sales volume was 4 million and your actual sales volume was 4,040,000. So out of 4,000,000, 40,000 is not a big amount. But if your budgeted sales volume was 50,000 and the actual sales volume is 90,000, so 40,000 is highly significant in this situation, but 40,000 is not significant in this situation. So 10,000 change, 20,000 change, 30,000 change will not give you a good idea. It's always better to go for the ratios, right? So how can we say? We say that, look, company increased 40,000 unit sales out of the budget of 60,000. That makes around 67%, almost 2/3, right? Almost 2/3. So this means what? This means the sales has been significantly increased during the period. Significantly, why I'm focusing on significantly, because this is not just an increase. This is a massive increase, right? So this is basically how we can, structure our answer, right? Now let me give you an idea, basic idea. See, this is the basic structure of planning and operational variances, which I believe 90% of the question you can do by using these comments, right? From the given scenario, it seems that production manager didn't perform well, as first part is related to the total one, A requirement. Total material variance is this. However, it is really important to look at planning and operational variances in detail, right? Planning, first we give the basic definition of planning variance. That planning, what is the planning variance? In this case, and then we connected it with this case, that in this case, these two factors are beyond his control. So obviously this is not a general theory. We applied the theory in the question. And we said that, look, this variance is not responsible. He's not responsible for this variance. Operational variance, the first part is related to the basic definition of operational variance. Then we connected it with the scenario that this decision was his control. And then this quality part, and in the end, we just concluded this. So this is basically how you can attempt, how you can secure 100% marks in any question. It's really very important to see. I always believe in one thing, that it's really very important for you guys to understand the marking scheme. Marking scheme is the most important point, because I've seen so many students who flunk in PM paper again and again, and they go with the same preparation. Even obviously, if you are studying one course again and again, your motivation level goes down. So they prepare less in the next exam. The problem with them is that they do not understand the marking scheme. I mean, just imagine you are working in an organization, you are working really very hard on to get the bonus, but you don't know on what factors your bonus is based on. Your bonus is based on the sales factor, and you are working for any other factors. Obviously, you will not get bonus. You are writing multiple things, but you are not writing what the examiner is actually asking you to write. Obviously, examiner will not give you marks for that. So this mark allocation is really very important, especially for performance measurement and variances, because performance measurement and variances, these are two topics where you students can write so many things that comes into his mind. In variances is still a reasonable, controllable thing. But in performance measurement, you can, there are so many thoughts and you come to your mind that, okay, fine, this could have happened, that could have happened. This can be because of this reason, this can be because of that reason, but you have to control your emotions. That if the question is of 16 marks, If the requirement is of 12 marks, you have to write according to 12 marks. Don't waste your time in over analysis or under analysis. Your analysis should be perfect. Write according to the marking scheme. Right? So in today's lecture, we have covered a basic topic of F5 and we have learned how to write your answer in the paper. And since you guys are having a computer-based examination, it's really very easy. When we attempted our paper, that was a manual requirement. In manual requirement, you can, once you have written, you have written. You cannot cut, copy, paste. You cannot do anything. But now you can cut, copy, paste. If you just write, and if you have written something wrong, just reshuffle it. It's simple. And obviously, your examiner will not be able to know how many times you have rewritten your paragraph. It's really very easy for you guys to do a computer-based examination, especially this writing part. You just have to focus on your typing speed. Apart from that, it's really easy, right? So we will have our if you want to take admission, you have to contact with IPF Global, right? And we will have our next session after 15 days, right? I will announce that as well. And in that lecture, we will start with another topic, and we will do it in examination condition. Like this is basically something which I have written, right? I will write I mean, you haven't seen me writing this, but in the next class we will try to do some question either on Excel, computer-based examination part Excel, or we will try to use our Word and how to cut, copy, paste, and how to manage your answer there. We will try to do that, right? Till then, if you have any issues, if you have any query, you can write it on the chat box. Otherwise, that's it for today. Is there any issue? All right. So that's all for today. All right. Thank you. That's all for today. Take care. Allah Hafiz.